Mrs. Macready, Sarah Macready, is one of the most interesting characters one can ever come across while working in Bristol Old Vic Theatre. As an actress, she was a very great actress many years ago. Her maiden name was Sarah Desmond. And she played at the Theatre Royal in King Street under the management of William Charles Macready. And while they were working together, they fell in love and then got married, and she became Mrs. Macready, Mrs. Sarah Macready. And when William married her, after being married for a very short time, he turned around to her and said, "Darling, I'm going to go off acting, here are the keys." And he gave her the keys of the theatre. And made her one of the very first powerful women in the city of Bristol to single-handedly be up there with all these other businessmen, all these other men. But this lady was very unique, and she ran the theatre. Because she was an actress, she then had to take on a sort of a dual role. She was a sort of a stage manager come house manager. When I first started working at the theatre, I met a very interesting character called Tony. Now, Tony was head of security, and it was his job on an evening basically to go around the whole of that theatre and make sure it's completely locked and secure, end of day's business, done and dusted. Now, Tony, as a character, did not believe in anything sort of supernatural or anything ghostly, nothing like that would bother him at all, really. And he told me this story that one evening something happened in that theatre which made him change his mind. Now, you wouldn't argue with Tony, he was a very big man, a big chunky man, but he used to go around at the end of an evening with an Alsatian dog called Rex. And he said he was just doing his normal checks he does every night, goes down and basically locks all the doors. And as he walked on the right-hand side of the horseshoe corridor at the underground there, going into the main entrance of the theatre, he felt as if a door was open because he felt a draft. And he thought, he said, someone had left the bloody door open, as he did. And as he walked along, he couldn't see any door open at all. So he had his torch, he was shining it from left to right, and he thought, there's no door open. Where's that draft coming from? Anyway, he turned and he went to go forward, but then couldn't go forward because the dog, Rex, had actually rooted himself to the spot. And he said, "Come on, boy," he said, "what's the matter?" Because it's pitch dark, it's just him, the torch, and the dog on a lead. And he literally had to pull the dog along. And as he pulled the dog along, the dog started to growl and bark. And he said, "What is it, boy?" And as he started barking, he suddenly heard a woman's voice behind him say two words. And those two words were, "Get out." And he thought, no, this is my imagination. He said, "Shut up." He said, "This is," he just instantly dismissed it. But he said, then what happened next was quite extraordinary, because as he turned, what came over him was quite unusual, because it was a very, very strong smell of perfume. It was like lavender perfume. And he thought, he said, well, where's that come from? And then the dog started barking, but the dog then started actually howling. It did its big howl. And then he heard this woman's voice again, and he turned with his torch and said, "Who's there?" Because he heard it clear, as I'm talking to you. He said, "Who's there?" And all he could see was this beam of light, no shape, no form, nothing at all. And the dog, he could not get the dog to move. So he thought, no, I'm going to go forward. So as he took another step forward, he didn't see any shape or form in front of him. But what happened next, he could not dismiss. He heard this woman's voice again say the two words, "Get out." But this time, as those words were spoken, he felt the breath on his face as if she was stood directly in front of him. And that, he said to him, he could not dismiss. But it's quite interesting, because when you look back in history, Sarah Desmond, Mrs. Macready, part of her job in that theatre was to look after over 1,000 Bristolians in that theatre. And at the end of an evening, although she was a stage manager, as well as being an actress and manager of the theatre, part of her job at the end of the evening was to go down and get the audiences out. Of course, in the pit level, which we call it the stalls, it's now renamed itself the pit. That's where the riff-raff of Bristol used to sit with their pig trotters' feet and their oranges and their apples. And they used to get quite drunk and, climb over one another. And it was her job to go around and basically say, "Come on, get out." So to me, looking back over history, I think she was just going over all ground. mean, I've had my own personal experience twice. I've had two occasions, personally myself, where I've not seen her, but I felt her. I felt her presence twice. The very first time was coming through the paint shop, which of course back years ago would have been back at the old Cooper's Hall fruit and vegetable warehouse. And whether it was her or not, but I was followed through. I heard footsteps as clearly as I'm talking to you today, and I felt there was somebody behind me, and I thought to myself, it's a cleaner. It's probably Bob or Rose, because there used to be a husband and wife team with Bob and Rose who used to come and clean the theatre in those days. So I let go of the handle, I went to turn and say, "Good morning, Bob," and there was nobody there. But I felt there was somebody stood right behind me, but what came across me was this smell of lavender. This very strong smell of lavender. I went, oh, bloody hell. And of course I was there on my own, so I went to the box office, and I had to open at 9:15 in those days, and I sat there and I had to wait till 10 o'clock before I was joined by someone that could share my experience with, but it sort of really did unnerve me. Years ago, the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, ironically, was doing Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice production in the main theatre, and apparently through history, I was told, Jane Austen, when she lived in Bath, had a bit of an offset with Mrs. Macready. They didn't like one another. And it was quite interesting, but on this particular evening, the head of security in those days was a gentleman called Alistair, and Tony, the theatre manager in those days, came out to the bar area, and we had like a leaflet rack where we had all forthcoming shows. Well, ironically, all these leaflets on the floor from the Bristol Theatre School production of Pride and Prejudice, and they thought, well, kids, knocking around, so getting all these leaflets out, put them back in the rack, went into the theatre, went round, did what Tony's doing underneath the horseshoe, do all the lockup and everything, no problems, nothing at all. When they came back out, the front doors of the theatre were locked. These were the only two gentlemen in that theatre. When they came back out into the horseshoe, all the leaflets, only the Pride and Prejudice ones, were all on the floor again. How the hell did that happen? And they said to me, you know, there's nobody else in there with us, Andrew. You know, we didn't see anybody, but suddenly we put all those leaflets up, we went in the auditorium, we were there for about 10 minutes. Came back out, and all those leaflets, just those leaflets, no other leaflets, but just those leaflets for that production were all on the floor again.
Wow.
They could not dismiss that. So she has been a force to be dealt with. One actress had a very strange, surreal experience happen to her on the side of the stage, and it so unnerved her. She came on stage 4 pages early, and these actors are on stage and thinking, well, she's keen tonight, but she's doing on stage, does normally come on at this point, but she came on, but she felt safer on stage in front of 600 people in that theatre than she did in the wing. She felt very, very threatened. And she didn't actually see anything, but she felt this presence push by her. And she saw this black shadowy figure, which really did unnerve her. And of course she was there on her own, she had nobody else to back her up, but she felt safer on stage. And afterwards, she told the stage manager about this, Danielle. And it was quite interesting because Danielle said, well, that's strange, this has happened because earlier, there's like a pass door between the side of the horseshoe from the dress circle level to the stage manager corner in the side of the stage, otherwise known in those days is prompt corner. And she said that earlier that evening she saw somebody there, and she jumped through and went, aha, who are you? Thinking it was somebody larking about, and there's 2 of her friends come through the pass door on the other side and said, what's wrong with you? They said, do you not see that lady? They said, what lady? And she saw this woman move very, very quickly. And then this happened to this other actress later on that evening. So there was something about that day. And it is interesting over the years. I've been told all sorts of different stories. The last sighting that I've been told, told to me, that the last thing I was told was by Andrei Blonsky, who was the wonderful gentleman who oversaw the refurbishment of the theatre, done such a fantastic job in that beautiful theatre, making it work again for today's audiences. And he said just before they started the refurb, coming out of the top of where there's the gents' toilets in the theatre, and you've got like a set of steps that takes you down to the upper circle level. He came out of there and came down the steps. As he came down the steps, he suddenly looked up. He saw this woman looking at him. He thought, who's that woman? And he looked round again. It was seconds. He said she had gone, this vision. He said the thing that struck him was she was in like a period dress, but her hair was down, which is unusual because whenever I've been told, it's always been up in a bun. But she smiled at him. And I think, I think she was pleased, the theatre's being saved and carried on. I think she has been quite a force there over the years. Although I had that experience happen to me in the paint shop, I was told years ago the fact that there was a chap called Gerald, and apparently they had a paint frame which worked by a handled crank. Nowadays you just have a nice little electric button, you push the button, the hole goes up and down with the greatest ease. But years ago they had one with a hand crank which you would have to turn the handle, and apparently this young chap called Gerald, who worked in that part of the building, died tragically through this paint frame not locking in properly, I was told, and the handle basically didn't lock in, and the handle span and went back and knocked him in the head and killed him, and he died. And for many years people said there was this chap called Gerald who used to walk, but he hasn't walked for a while, I don't think, personally. I take that with a pinch of salt, but it does make more sense for it to be Sarah. And when you look back at the history of that wonderful theatre and everything that she did in that building, she made it work, and she was incredible. 7 days a week she opened up that theatre, and she lived and had a great passion. She was an actress and became a wonderful theatre manager and became quite a powerful presence in the city of Bristol, and led the way for more women to follow, I think. I think she was the original Spice Girl of her time. I think we're approaching a very special anniversary, because next year the theatre is going to be, and no other theatre in the country has ever celebrated 250 years. It's going to be a very, very special time. I'm sure she'll make an appearance in that anniversary video. She's bound to. But I think over the whole, although she has been a threat, I think she's gone through history, and I think she's just pleased. And as a lady, she has been quite a tour de force to look after that building and keep her eye on it over the years. And I'm sure she's pleased that it's carrying on.